Hello, welcome to Airing Out. I'm Josh.
And I'm Jonas.
This is Jerry. And today we're going to be talking about the Band of Brothers.
The Band of Brothers. It is not a Jonas Brothers band. No. It's... You're looking at me like I'm such an idiot.
I'm going to let you finish that joke. No recovery from me.
The joke is done. The Band of Brothers is a TV series.
Leave a like if you laughed. Yeah, so we live streamed ourselves watching it for 10 hours.
I thought I was funny.
No.
Yeah.
We'll find out how many likes
No,
we do
definitely,
again.
yeah, definitely leave a like if you laughed or chuckled or even smiled. If you thought it was
If you
somewhat...
breathed slightly heavier through your nose.
Yes.
While thinking about smiling.
Yes. I think we should get a lot of likes.
No, so we watched all 10 episodes on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We live streamed the whole thing, and we kind of chucked out some thoughts as we watched it. But seeing as it was your first time seeing all the episodes,
Yes.
we thought we'd record a little doodad.
And obviously, it's hard to talk over something that you're so immersed in.
Especially towards
watching.
the end, like it really starts to suck up kind of mental energy.
Yeah.
But,
No, you just want to watch, obviously, and not chat over stuff. So that's why we're doing this.
Airing it out.
I guess it's a retrospective.
Yeah, I'll call it retrospective.
Yeah.
We've got everything planned.
Exactly.
So planned.
So planned.
And we'll also, of course, draw reference to other World War II films, mainly the modern ones, because that's what you've seen.
Probably.
I've seen a couple in the past, so I will check them out to show off, but that's all really.
I mean, starting with, obviously, Saving Private Ryan, because that's kind of why Band
of Brothers was made.
Yeah. So it is, it was produced by Spielberg and
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, obviously, having been in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, so essentially the story goes that... I realised my glasses are reflecting off the TV. The story goes that Spielberg made Saving Private Ryan, thought there was more to tell in this story.
Mm-hmm.
So wanted to tell a slightly different World War II tale, but still following the Americans in World War II, and more variation in terms of battles rather than just the initial D-Day landings.
I think that's very fair because, like, what you get with Band of Brothers that you definitely don't get with Saving Private Ryan is just the progression of the war.
Yeah.
And also a lot more realism in what happened because they obviously all of these stories are pretty much accurate.
They're straight up, yeah. So instead of Saving Private Ryan where they take kind of events that happened and take inspiration from that, these are just straight up, this is a book that was written, the characters are the exact same names of real people that are still alive, it's the stories that they're telling, so it's probably mostly real. And it stays pretty close to that. There's only a couple bits where they kind of deviate, but whereas Saving Private Ryan is fiction. Very authentic, but not accurate. But yeah, no, I think Band of Brothers did. Like I'm a big fan. I think it's one of the tightest 10 episodes miniseries.
Oh yeah.
Ever?
Yeah. I know. I do like that. You can tell like it was only meant to be those 10 episodes, and to not have this whole like open ending or whatever. We might go on and tell more stories. Is like no, we follow these characters through the war, and that's kind of the whole point of like these guys beginning to end and how they come together as a group.
Yeah.
And experience World War II as this group. Yeah.
And I also think so hopefully you have watched it. If you haven't, watching it with us, watching it for 10 hours is definitely the way to do it.
Definitely the way to do it. It's so much
It's coming
more
off
fun.
Prime on the 21st, I think.
Oh.
So you've got a couple days. Otherwise, it's on Now TV, the Sky one.
Which you can get a free trial.
Or HBO Go if you're in America. Otherwise, VPN's required.
That's actually so funny because like HBO is so linked to Game of Thrones that every single time it goes like,
yeah, you think of dun 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 dun. Yeah, I mean it's I guess all that we watched for 8 years of HBO TV.
Yeah, I mean I watched Game of Thrones in a much shorter time span because I was quite late to it.
Fair.
But still.
But still, no, it's definitely, so it's worth watching because we are going to go full spoilers in this retrospective.
Oh, yeah.
We're not hiding away from that. But no, I think, so the way they got it, obviously, they set up the cast of 15 main characters.
Yeah, roughly.
And you follow, so obviously, like, Winters, you follow more. But there's no key one character, so like even really early on, like Blythe gets his own episode in episode 3, which is nice. It means you care about these characters. Or on the other end of the spectrum, you see like Eugene throughout, and then it's only later on that he actually gets his own episode. Yeah, and then he shows up a little bit after that, and it just means you actually have an attachment to every single individual character, rather than just being like, this is Major Winters, because I think it would have been kind of not boring, but like in Bastogne, you're like, so he's hiding out in his tent. Yeah. Not doing much.
No, I think it's really cool because you always have someone telling the story of that episode, of that battle, of that situation in a meaningful way, because they really have something to say about that situation rather than, Winters, who gets promoted to a point where he's further behind the line and therefore hasn't much to say about that situation because he wasn't really there. Maybe. And it's also like, it's definitely, you get to know every character, and not just the group as one character, because it's like, okay, it's the squad is
just gonna fix that.
Fix that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Opinion from my chair. No, I think that's a good way of
and it makes for interesting storytelling.
Doesn't mean in terms of like outwith of the historical whatever. In terms of as a TV show, it means that not like there's no like antagonist of the show. Everyone is a protagonist. There's no.
Well, the war is.
Yeah, but in terms of as a character, like a lot of these kind of war stories. End up with that kind of one annoying member that's. Doing something against the rules, or there's a fallout within the group, whereas this is very much a tale of like even these people that have differences. We do see some of them kind of scrap off at the start, but it actually ends up they all get on very well, which I think is accurate. That's what probably would happen. While you're just fighting to survive, you're probably unlikely to fall out.
Yes. Or that would change the whole situation drastically.
Yeah, I think it's refreshing because a lot of these shows, like we always talk, like buddy cop films. There's that middle half an hour where they just fall out inexplicably,
and then they have to come together again to get the job done. Yeah,
and it's like they could be the best friends for 10 years, but for this film, they will fall out in the 10 minutes in the night. It's like, okay, right, great.
No, obviously, I mean they have enough conflict with the war, with the situations they get thrown in, that they don't need any of that. And I think it's also, I don't know, because what I'm wondering is, with its accuracy, how much is it actually like a fiction drama, historical drama, or is it just a fictionalized documentary?
I mean, hearing the really reports... Like, hearing the actual veterans speak, it does sound like they have literally just filmed it. Yeah. Exactly as it was. Yeah. Which makes for a far more interesting documentary than most documentaries.
But I feel like it is, in terms of its style, it is really a documentary in that sense, because they also have interviews, not at the start of every episode, but most episodes. So it is really just, to me, it is just a brilliant documentary,
I think that's why as well, like, it's kind of lasted a bit longer. Like, obviously everyone talks about the opening of Saving Private Ryan, because that was revolutionary. Yeah. But in terms of like the lasting impact of Saving Private Ryan, I don't think it's done as well as Band of Brothers. I think more people keep that in a higher regard.
Interesting.
Whereas
I definitely haven't heard of it before. Hearing it from you, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But I guess we don't get HBO and
yeah. I definitely, whenever people are talking about like best TV shows, it usually comes up as like, okay, it's not like a TV show, but it's a mini-series, and it is the best one.
Fair enough.
And I think, like, it does go to show how advantageous it is to write out beforehand what your plan is. And and other TV shows that we've talked about, like Black Sails, was written as 4 seasons and was filmed as 4 seasons. Whereas when you're like, we could do 7 or 8, 9, you know, should we stop at 6?
Like, let's do 2 and see where we go.
Yeah.
We're probably gonna end up in weird places.
I know, like Walking Dead, famously, they said, we're gonna run it until it's no longer profitable. And you're like, well, I'm just gonna stop watching then. That doesn't sound like great TV.
Yeah.
No, so I think in terms of 10 episode cohesion, you're able to get this character development that is so well planned out.
Yeah.
So that's how I found out about it. So it was like, I like Saving Private Ryan. This is very highly recommended. I've tried watching The Pacific. I'm not such a fan.
The Pacific, is that also a series?
So it came out just after. It's the exact same in terms of layout. But I find it very hard to get. Yes, well done.
Hey, big brains.
I find it very hard to get attached to the characters after spending so much time with Easy Company.
Interesting.
And then you start off with these new people, and I'm like, I just don't.
Interesting.
Not as.
Because I definitely. Again, I mean, maybe similar to Red Dead Redemption, I feel like we didn't actually spend that much time with the individual characters to have that strong bond connection.
Really?
Like we as an audience that they have. Yeah. I don't know, maybe that's also because to me they are still very similar. Like it took me like a lot of episodes out of 10 to actually be able to like properly differentiate every single one of them.
Wow, okay, interesting.
I don't know. I mean, a lot of them look very much alike.
Yeah. Okay. I don't find that. I definitely think that's why this show is so powerful, because for me anyway, they're all fairly distinct. There's maybe 2 that look quite similar, Malarkey and the guy that shoots himself with the Luger.
Yes.
Have a very similar facial structure. And
definitely. No, but even Eugene,
Eugene looks very similar to Hall, but Hall dies very quickly. To the point where I wouldn't be surprised if they said it's the same actor.
Oh.
Like, they are similar.
Yeah.
But the rest of them, I think I could quite easily point out by name.
No, I don't know. It's just obviously by giving everyone their time, it means that everyone is getting a portion of the time rather than, let's say, 3 characters get all the time.
For sure.
And so you do get attached to everyone, but not as strongly as you would if it was only 1 or 3 main characters. Yeah, I don't know. It's I definitely think they made the right decision, also because it makes for really, really interesting storytelling. Because they don't just switch up the narrator, they also switch up the style of how they tell the story. Like, is it with voiceovers? Is it with the whole episode as like a flashback? Yeah, so I definitely think they made the right decision, but I don't know, it's a different kind of connection you create with these guys.
No, I definitely feel more strongly about like the characters that do get blown up in Band of Brothers compared to like the guy that gets shot in Saving Private Ryan. Just because you get so much less time, and that's Tom Hanks' story.
Oh yeah. No, that's why you don't care about.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, it's a shame that the medic gets shot, but like, it's really sad. That scene alone is sad, but in terms of the larger impact to the story, I don't think it's felt so much. Whereas like when Garnier gets his leg blown off, right after Joe Toy gets his leg blown off, you see that impact on Malarkey. And that's also a character that you've come to care for, or I came to care for. And then you're left with that for another 3 episodes. So like you're seeing, and then at the end, like, you know, you've got the guy that goes off.
My
That's
phone's
okay.
buzzing.
That's okay.
So popular.
Your chair clicks are far louder than your phone buzzes.
Is that true?
Yep. It peaks the mic.
Oh. Not in my head.
Yeah, that's why you're singing as well. You're like, no, very quiet.
No, a buzz is like trying to get my attention, whereas this is me doing nervous twitches.
But no, the guy that goes off the front for essentially PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
But you see him coming back, and he's kind of like with the boys, but not really at the end when he's playing baseball.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. I'm like, no, you're seeing the impact of the war
Mm-hmm.
after the war as well.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, and how that's changed everyone's lives compared to just, oh, Ryan wants to stay fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I definitely like that.
Yeah.
I think it's a better story.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's the thing I don't know how you could make Band of Brothers better. Because I think the ones that do focus on one, so if we look at like modern films, you got Fury, Hacksaw Ridge, and Saving Private Ryan. Mm-hmm. All the ones I can think of.
Yeah. Otherwise, you start treading into weird territory.
Yeah, there's a couple obscure ones we know. There's like Stalingrad and Downfall, and then there's all the old ones: Battle of Remagen, Bridge of Remagen, Battle of the Bulge, A Bridge Too Far.
Yeah.
The Longest Day or something. I don't know. They all start to sound like Bond films when you get into
Dunkirk.
Dunkirk. I've seen Dunkirk. I've seen Dunkirk.
The Darkest Hour.
Darkest Hour is a political film, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's
not a war film.
But like in terms of
Inglourious Bastards, obviously.
If we count that, but war films made after the year 2000.
Yeah.
I think none of them have the kind of impact that Band Brothers is able to get, even if you don't. Yeah.
No, for sure, and I mean also because it's again the same thing, because it is a series. They can take the time to address many different things, you know. So to also get in the concentration camps, to get in the PTSD, to get in the fact like, oh, what did they do when Germany already surrendered but the war wasn't over, you know, what is it like for soldiers that, like soldiers of peace.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing like after the war is over.
Yeah, you see Tom Hardy interact with the soldier that's fought in 2 world wars, and he's now just like a road traffic guy, and he's like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm out. And I'm like, yeah, that's interesting to see, like, how would they interact? Stuff. I like it.
It's crazy. And it definitely is a lot to think about.
Yeah.
For sure.
No,
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy it. I think it's thoroughly rewatchable as well, in terms of the drama and the characters and what they go through.
Yep.
I think the action is well filmed. It's not one of those things where you're kind of like, we're watching this bit to kind of flesh out the pacing. Whereas like a couple of films we watched recently where you're like, okay, they're inserting fight to have one.
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Which is good. I think it's well done. And I'd be interested to see how you feel about it after rewatching. So I wonder if you start to care about the characters more.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just a matter of like, I really see these 2 characters have chemistry, and I really like that, and I'm totally on board with that. And then they switch over to other characters. I'm like, oh yeah, they have chemistry as well, and it's cool and stuff. But maybe, it would just be a matter of like, you know, digging deeper into that. But then obviously you lose everyone else.
Yeah. See, yeah.
And that's why I think it is absolutely the right decision.
Especially for the medium that you've got. Yeah. I do think, like, in terms of...
And otherwise it'd be like the trio of brothers.
6, yeah.
Which would be...
the Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
But we watched up to episode 6 before.
Yes.
And we stopped. And I think after that point, the show gets far more melancholy. So you get them all getting blown up in the next episode, and then you've got they're fighting the prison camp, which is obviously horrible, and then you get that kind of post-war nothing where everyone's quite like they're just hunting down officers that worked at the prison camp. They're getting drunk and shooting each other. He kills a British officer, and it's stuff like that. I'm like, you know, you kind of, I mean, you comment on it, like, and military types tend to be quite alpha male. Yeah. And if you get these alpha males and chuck them against evil, essentially, that works. But as soon as there's nothing to do, and they even talk about it, you get alcohol, guns, and these people that all want to be the best, the strongest, the toughest.
Yeah.
That has problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's nice that they address that. And I do think it's quite tough to watch those last couple episodes, because these people who have been friends for so long are starting to tear each other apart and kind of make mistakes, and the cracks start to show. And like, there's the new guy O'Keefe that joins, and the guy just snaps at him straight away. He's like, look, I just want to read my book, you know, just leave me alone. And it's like, this isn't the the bond isn't there anymore. You know, even though that guy's new, but obviously like they've lost all their friends essentially.
Yeah. No, I think it's very cool, especially if you think about how at that point there wasn't a lot of like, how do we deal with soldiers that come back from the war?
Wasn't even a thing. Yeah, no. Like look at Vietnam. Even that was after. Yeah, and all the vets that came back from that are
absolutely
broken people.
Yeah, no, it was funny when we looked up PTSD, because it was like, yeah, obviously it's not PTSD because there wasn't shell shock or battle fatigue. You know, not even acknowledge that. Something is like, oh, you know, what's going on? He says he can't see anymore when he obviously can.
Fatigue, you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think also in that regard, it's really cool to be like, it's also a critique of you know,
well, society in the 40s for sure.
Yeah.
No, I think it's good. I do think it's a tough watch. Like it's not all watching shootouts. Like as devastating as the opening of Saving Private Ryan is, there's an element of that that's quite not fun to watch, but it's like shocking in a more enjoyable way. Like that as a 25-minute action sequence.
Yeah.
Compared to like I'd say like Hacksaw Ridge actually, where it is just they are running in fear pretty much the whole time. Whereas there's an element of like we're overcoming this great obstacle and stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely, because it starts with that. You have this like, oh my god, what is going on? And then they're done with that, and you're like, wow, that was so cool. And then the film kind of starts after that, really. And Band of Brothers is definitely like, it just doesn't stop. It's always something different, but it doesn't stop.
No, for sure.
It stays tense in various ways.
Yeah, and I think we noticed that it was after that point, by episode 7, that we started to really quieten up as we were watching it. Because it's like, you know, they're getting bombarded in Bastogne, and like, this is...
Yeah.
Like, you're tense, you know? Then they find the prison camp, and I'm like, I'm not going to crack any jokes over this. Like...
No.
No.
But I think it's also interesting that they don't lose their humor. You know, you still have tiny bits of that, and I mean it's mostly in their interaction with one another, and that's what I also mean with chemistry.
Where humor should be.
Yeah, obviously, and also, I mean, yeah, how else would you go about all these situations if you're like down all the time, if you don't have humor to kind of lighten the mood
well, I mean, you see that some of the characters lose their sense of humor.
Yeah.
And they kind of lose themselves.
Yeah. Pretty much. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I always say, even comedies should just have funny characters rather than funny situations. So there will always be a joker in a group that should lighten the mood, in film or in real life.
Try. Yeah. And like sometimes it's misplaced, and then he gets put into his place and stuff. No, for sure. I always like, because it's interesting how it's the same with actually shooting scenes that are like that, like heavy and stuff, because you will also notice if you spend your entire day shooting a prison camp scene, let's say, you will definitely like end the take and people will start making jokes and stuff, because you cannot, as an actor, as a team, you cannot maintain that for a day or a week or something. Like people would also on set go crazy.
No, for sure.
And it is very interesting, I think, also for an actor or like whatever. It is quite hard sometimes to make that switch from I'm acting this and I'm in that scenario, and then to be like, okay, the scenario's over and I'm back into my normal world and everything's okay again. In that sense, I think. I
mean, especially if it's like it's so obvious that everything's practical. I mean, it had to be because it's 1999.
Yeah.
No, 2001. 2001.
Yeah.
Same part around 1999. But like, everyone was in uniform. Like, if you're looking at the prison camp, they built that again. You know, pretty much on location. And you're like that's tough.
Yeah,
it's very easy to get.
And
immersed.
The people they got, you were like, you wonder where they got these people from, because
not all of them. Like, some of them are just skinny, but there's a couple that are like moving, and you're like, wow, that's not a dummy. Like, that's a person that's seriously skinny. So yeah, good on them. But it's definitely shocking, and I think it's shocking in the right way. It's not Like, I think that's why people struggle to watch Schindler's List. Because you know that you're in for a film about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. And
you're going to see a lot of that.
But you can mentally prep for that. Or Boy in the Striped Pajamas, which is one that British school children all, I presume they still watch. We definitely did.
Oh, interesting.
So, like, yeah, it's required.
Damn.
I think we read it, actually, in, like, primary 6. Which is when we are 8, 9. Yeah, so that's the other bit we learn about in World War II, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, or like The Pianist, which I still think is the most depressing of the 3, because it is just...
I haven't seen it.
It's horrible. Like, it's a great movie, but horrible to watch. But in terms of, you can also mentally prep for that.
Yeah.
Whereas it comes out of left field in
Pretty
Band of
much,
Brothers.
yeah.
Like, even you kind of said, I mean, you can check our stream for proof. It'll be about 8 hours and a bit in. But like, it just shows them walking up to it, and he's like, you need to see this and run. It's like, but what has he found? Like, why wouldn't it just show us? Then you finally do see it, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Right.
Good reveal.
Yeah, really well done, and it's not too like, ta-da, surprise, but just very much like somber, like, oh, yeah, no, this is why we were fighting. And I think it hits the viewer somewhere they don't expect it, because even the episode before that is when they were actually taking Foy out of Bastogne, so you do get that bit more action from them being bombarded. The episode before, which is also depressing. But it's like, okay, we're getting a bit more action, and they've got the problems with Foxhole Norman, you know, and it's like back to kind of in-unit issues rather than that kind of larger picture stuff. Yeah. So it gives you a wee taste of normal tone and then chucks you right back into it, and I think it's very well done.
No, I think it's an amazing contrast, that episode between they're finally in like a secure place, they can sleep indoors, they have good food and hot showers, yada, and then to contrast that with them finding the camps is insane, and it is like a good reveal, not just dramatically, but also like you as a viewer experience it the same way, I guess, as the characters do, as like you.
I don't think the viewers expect it.
Yeah, like you have completely forgotten that could come up in the story, because it's such a fighting film up until then, that you definitely don't expect to ever see that.
I also think most World War II stuff does seem to be very segmented. It is either a Holocaust film or a war movie.
Absolutely.
It's very rare they cross.
Yeah.
In the same way you get like prison camp movies, so like Bridge Over the Requai or Christian Bale's first film, P-51, Cadillac of the Sky, Flies Over. No, Empire of the Sun. There you go.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Absolutely.
I've seen that. There's that one Angelina Jolie did, Unbroken.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's a couple like that are like, this is just prison camp, but they very rarely converge. So obviously you get Holocaust and kind of normal war movie stuff in one thing, which I think is why it comes off as so surprising. Which is nice.
I mean, it's not a lot, but it's enough to definitely remind you, and also obviously then remind the characters of like, oh, we're in this.
No.
Yeah. But
like
that raises the stakes for them like through the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do think there is an element of like separation for viewers though, in terms of, I don't think most people watch Saving Private Ryan and even think about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that's on people's radar.
No.
Whereas if you watch on this list, that's what the film's about.
Yeah.
But you'll never see like American soldiers in a Holocaust movie, or only at the very end of it, set towards 1945, obviously.
That's true.
It just doesn't happen. So I do think it is a kind of, viewers forget what the war movies are actually about, you know.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I can't remember if there's anything like that.
Oh, I like that. I like that so much, because I mean, with a lot of war movies, and like especially in Hollywood war movies, they have to tread real easy to not just make it super patriotic and glorifying war through that. And definitely like Saving Private Ryan, and I think they follow that through into Band of Brothers. It's not at all glorifying war. Like it's all about the horrors of war and how that molds and like creates the bond between these guys. So it's like the outside influences that create, like, as horrific as they may be, they create something that is somewhat good between these guys. But to then also show all this stuff, it's like, it's bad. It's all really bad.
Yeah.
And not just for them. I mean, also for the Germans. Like they do show as like they were in the war as well, and it was bad for them as well. Like for different motivations and bad motivations, but like.
Yeah, I love that's a really good scene where the German commander gives his speech. It's definitely been written in English because it fits too perfectly.
Yeah.
But like, and it's his speech to his men in the final episode when he's surrendering, and it's like, no, we've created this bond, we've been in foxholes together, we've fought together through this, and this, and you see Winters have that realization that actually, they're like, they're, in terms of as a unit, these guys are platoon. These guys have gone through the exact same experience as them, and it's just because there's 10 evil people at the top that all of this has happened.
Virtually, yeah.
Yeah,
no, and me especially towards the end of the war with like Germans recruiting really, really young guys.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, they also say like the Americans have their replacements who are like way too young and
16.
And poorly trained and stuff like that. You know, you're just sending cannon fodder at that point.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. You know, that's mental. But it's the same on both sides. Yeah.
But I think that's definitely something. I mean, we spoke about this briefly. I think World War II was a justified conflict, and one of the few justified conflicts we've had in the last 100 or so years.
Like for all the Allies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not the Germans, sadly. not much going on there.
No.
I mean, to an extent, Japan, because of the nature of how the world was at that time, they were kind of chucked into it. You know, like, I mean, there was reasons that they attacked America. It wasn't just, they had no oil.
Yeah.
So, like, issues. But I think it was definitely a justified conflict between Britain, America, France, Belgium.
Oh, yeah.
And Germany.
There was definitely a reason to go to war, to fight back, compared to, say, the First World War.
Which was just, everyone wanted a couple extra meters across their border.
Yeah.
No one really knew what was going on. It was just
especially
big
African
empires.
Imperialism and stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's something, like, I haven't actually seen 1917, I should say, but as far as I'm aware, it is just basically a story that happens to be set in 1917.
Yeah.
But I think it's a shame that films like that don't explore other sides of the conflict, whereas I very much understand why, as far as we're aware, we were trying to think of this yesterday, there is no World War II film that is the kind of the equivalent of Saving Private Ryan, but from the German POV.
I mean, yes, because it's very
I don't think you could do it.
Difficult to make. Like, we're following a German platoon through World War II. I think you would have to span it across the entirety of the war, which is significantly longer than obviously what the Americans fought, because they were in it for
a year.
Yeah.
I mean, we watched Das Boot, the TV show, recently, which is only Germans.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I mean,
they are all arseholes. It's hard. I mean, like, I stopped watching. I don't know if did you continue?
No, I didn't.
No, I was watching it because, with the exception of one or two characters, everyone in that show is deeply flawed. They all hate each other, and it just doesn't make for very. I mean, no one gets on.
I mean, it's definitely way more conflict between the characters.
And there's an element of like, oh, you understand that, like, you're locking these previously said alpha males into this tiny cabin. But you can see how that could have gone. Is like they went on a more Band of Brothers-esque approach. But then I think you risk portraying them as heroic, which I think that they just don't want to do because
absolutely.
But I think like an U-boat would have been the place to do it. Because they're so separated from the conflict.
You could definitely make that happen, because if it's like, okay, they start off as these patriots and go to war and want to fight these awesome battles, and then you have the Wehrmacht at the end fighting with the Allies together.
Yeah,
that
so
would
that
be
is
crazy.
There's a famous I don't know, battle where the Wehrmacht that had surrendered fought alongside the Americans against an SS division that were working as guerrilla fighters.
Like, that would also be a good statement in the end.
Yeah.
Like, to realize your mistakes and, I don't know if you can say redeem yourself, but like,
yeah,
in a way to be like, okay, I am,
because it's
more conscious about my actions.
I feel like you're recognizing that the fight wasn't against a country, but against a political party that was in control, and a horrible political party.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's why I just find Das Boot tiring. The TV show. I haven't seen the film, admittedly. Sorry. But no, the TV show is just tiring to watch because it's these people that are constantly beating each other up and raping people, and it's horrible.
No, they're always fighting amongst each other, so it's not like the show doesn't make good use of the already existing conflict of war itself.
Yeah.
So it feels very much like they're creating conflict where they don't really have the need to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a shame to watch, and it does just get kind of painful for the viewer because you're like, guys, just.
And it's just split up too much. Like they have the U-boat for like, I don't know, I think it's even less than 50%, and then they have the whole thing like in France where it's like, do we care about, where they try to get more political and with resistance fighters and stuff.
Yeah, they do cover the resistance fighters, which are overly heroized, I think. Like, it's great and all, but like, I think actually is it the German commander? We've given no real reason to hate him. Yeah. Like, he's one of the nicest characters in the show. Yeah. But they feel the need to constantly villainize him because he's a German commander. Yeah. Which I'm like, actually, I'd rather it doesn't work. If he's a nice person, have him be a nice person. Yeah. Have the guts to do it as a filmmaker, but they don't, which is a real shame. And I do think that's something that obviously is easier to do from an American or British perspective. I think what they're trying to go for is Hans Landa from Inglourious Basterds, where they are evil, but you just can't help but think they're awesome. There's that argument that Hans Landa isn't actually that evil. Like, he does acknowledge at the end, he's like, I'm just the detective, that this is the kind of jobs that are available to me in 1944. And it's like, okay, if you're a detective and there's no detective work, the army's going to pay you a fortune to become colonel and hunt down Jews, and you're like, well, it's morally morally it's awful, but in terms of like career prospects, I feel like I totally understand why people like businessmen and whatnot sided with the Nazis. If they were in power and you speak out against them and you get shot, yeah, fine, like. No, I think that's also, I mean, we definitely talked about this in regard to Band of Brothers and the episode with the camps, where like we didn't know anything about this. You're like, you might have not known exactly what was going on, but you sure knew something was up and didn't ask because exactly that reason. Like, if you ask, if you speak up, you're gonna be the next person that is taken there, and I think that's also just. It's really difficult. Yeah, no, I think there's an element of like self-survival that kind of goes into it. Because I don't know, we're, especially the way we are being taught that kind of history, I think is always like to not fall into saying like, oh, I would have definitely done something. I would have fought against the regime, because you're like. You probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't have. The Nazis were elected democratically, then did some shady stuff, but like most of the nation followed them, and they all had their reasons why they did. Yeah. No, totally fair, and I think you could argue like the fallout of World War One is obviously what gave rise to Hitler's power. Yeah. But that doesn't make them, like, there was no shady stuff like the Soviets, where it's like, this is your leader and Stalin is, he is your leader. If you say no, you'll get shot. It was like, no, Hitler was voted in, like, fair and square. And I think that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
And that's also why it's quite hard to justify them as heroes or good guys, because it's like, no, they voted for someone evil and he did evil stuff, and then everyone was like, nah, I didn't know. And you're like, yeah, okay, that's hard to write that as that side story. And you do see it done in other films like Battle of the Bulge and Bridget Remagen show the German side alongside the British and the American. But it's kind of like the military, not the SS or anything like that. You know, it's just the kind of, there's that one general that's leading his men. He's doing a good job leading his men. And there's some child soldiers that we don't talk about, you know. Stuff like that where you're like, okay.
Yeah, but then it's also really easy to project the evil onto like one person, like, oh, it's the evil general and we don't know the soldiers, but like they're just following his orders. Really. Yeah. But
no, I think in terms of Band of Brothers, incredibly historically accurate. I don't see, I know what you mean, like they could maybe cut out a couple characters. But I think it's done pretty well. There's always, everyone has a friend, if that makes sense. So like Winters has Nixon, even though Nixon isn't that developed a character until the very end.
Yeah.
It just gives him someone to chat to, because it wouldn't make sense for me, Winters to chat to like any of the other men, because he's way outranking them. Yeah,
absolutely.
So a lot of them have their buddies, or even stuff that like the other medic I don't know the name of, but it gives someone Eugene to chat to about medic-y stuff, and I'm like, cool. Great filmmaking.
Do you have morphine? No. Okay, bye.
Yeah, I mean, compared to, that's another thing, like Hacksaw Ridge. That's what I definitely want to talk about, because I still think it's so odd. I think it's the most America of the war films. Just like this weird thing's like, oh, you refuse to use a gun. I'm like, that's not real. Like I googled this like when that came out, because I was like, but medics didn't carry weapons. Like that was a known thing. There was always a medic in the unit. So surely it's not that odd. He's like, oh, I want to use a gun. And sure enough, they were trained with weapons. But if you're playing as a medic, it's not the end of the world. You know,
it's
like,
not odd to not at all have.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you can't be in the military. It's like, well, you can. There's tons of them. Like, that's not a rare thing to be a medic at all, obviously. So his, like, obviously what he did was very heroic in saving all those dudes up top. And I had no slight on that. But in terms of the conflict within the American military, I don't get. And it's like this huge, like, oh, no, I can still be a patriot without fighting and do my part for my country. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's what medics do.
Yeah.
Like, even now, they don't carry weapons, so as far as I'm aware.
No, that's the whole point. As soon as you carry a weapon, you can
get shot.
Yeah, you're a soldier. Yeah.
Which I still think is kind of odd. It's this whole, I can be pro-American, but not carry a gun, which always feels a little bit...
It's like, why is... Face. Yeah, why is that even... You know, I think that's way more a political statement about maybe the situation in America right now, whereas like Second Amendment, my rights and stuff is like, you don't need a gun. You know, why were we even talking about that? But it's also maybe not so much about society as a whole. It's just like, this is what is so entrenched in the military. Maybe is like the military is all about weapons and shooting people, whereas like, no, it's maybe more of a view it as a defensive thing.
Yeah.
You know, so it is saving people's lives is the main objective rather than
I still think though, for a film that's like, but how can you have a main character that doesn't carry a gun? I'm like, there's a ton of violence in that film. Like whenever they want to show a shootout, they just go, so Andrew Garfield's over here and these guys who we also know are going to do this bit, and you're like, right. Okay. It doesn't change the way the story's told to any extent. There's that 20-minute montage or whatever where he's dragging people off the top, and apart from that, the film's just a war film.
Yeah.
You get the training bit of the camp. They end up there. There's a bit of conflict between the men. They go up, have a shootout, come down. They go up. He saves the dudes, come down. He gets a medal. Great, done. Well done.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's again way more conflict between the people. And it's like, okay, if you're not carrying a weapon, how can I trust you to, like, save me or help me in the war effort because I do feel like that's definitely what the Banner Brothers also does well, is like they absolutely rely on each other. Like there's no someone outside of the company, you know, it's all you have to trust the guy who's in your foxhole or in the next foxhole. And so I do understand where it's like, okay, if he's a medic but he absolutely doesn't have a weapon, so there's no chance him helping me other than when I am already shot and bleeding out, you know, that kind of stuff. But still, I mean, medics don't care.
Don't care. It shouldn't be like the marketing point. I think like that, actually, the bit with Eugene where he's looking for morphine and Norman's like, oh, what happens if I get hit? And he's like, well, I'll be there. You know, and it's like, well, that's your job, because you're not going to self-administer morphine. If you're in that state, you're probably out. Yeah.
No, that's why it's like 2 medics in 1 foxhole.
That's a fair point, 100%. Yeah, like, get out.
We can't have both of you.
Yeah, and I think that just does a better job. Like, that 1-hour episode does a far better job of showing the kind of struggles of a medic rather than, you're not carrying a gun. It's like, that's... Sure, I'm sure that was a problem for that one dude, but it shouldn't have been, really.
No, that's true. I mean, it's with... Hacksaw Ridge, it's the same with like Saving Private Ryan, it's the same with 1917, even though that's a different war, but it's always these historic stories of just one person that's like, okay, you're blowing up this story to make it something super huge. Like, yes, obviously the events themselves, like him saving all these people on Hacksaw Ridge, is crazy, but to then construct all this story around that to actually fill a feature film is like, okay, everything else feels very heavy then. Whereas like obviously if you have multiple characters that all fill in that space where other people you would have to construct story, just makes it so much easier, because then you're like, you know, forget about these characters for now because they are totally not important here.
The only other times we see Eugene is when he's just helping someone. You don't need to worry about
what he does.
And I think like going back to like World War II being justified in terms of making films pro-war, it's an interesting area for World War II movies, because it's very easy for them to slip into war is good. I think Banner Brothers definitely manages to kind of shy away from that and goes, this war is okay, doesn't land there. But it's like, this war was justified, but war is hell. And this should never happen again. But this should never, like what the Nazis did should never happen either. Because I know that's definitely looking at more modern era war films. So, I mean, Green Zone does it really well.
Oh, yes.
Zero Dark 30, 13 Hours are all quite good, but then you get stuff like Black Hawk Down, Lone Survivor, films like that, maybe even Hurt Locker, and you're kind of like, this is a great story, but why are they there? You know, and it's just that kind of like, Tricky. American Sniper is another one, where it's like, it doesn't matter what message you're telling about how conflict is bad. End of the day, this is set in a conflict that just shouldn't have happened. So are you glorifying that even by portraying it in the first place? Which I disagree with, but I understand why people find that annoying.
I don't know, that is such a common struggle though, to be like, by showing it, are we perpetuating that kind of stuff, or are we showing it to have the viewer then make up their mind whether or not that is something good or bad. So to I don't know, incite thought about this topic. But yeah, definitely, I think it's that World War II as a conflict is super interesting, because you can go so many different ways about telling a story there, and making it very complex in terms of motivation of different characters to be in the conflict or to want the conflict to end or whatever, and that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
No, I definitely peak TV.
Yeah, no, definitely rewatchable for sure. And I think also like there's so many like A-list actors, and it's insane. I'm like, how did they get all of these
a
dudes
lot
on
pre-fame.
Yeah, pre-fame probably.
Pre-fame A-list actors, which is always fun to spot now. Because you're like, that's...
Yeah.
You know, I mean, heck, you've got Magneto and Xavier.
Yeah.
Which I just suddenly realized. So, yeah.
That was crazy when you were like,
that's Michael Fassbender. And
Michael
you're like,
Fassbender.
no, it's not.
He doesn't look anything like Michael Fassbender. 2 episodes later, oh my god, yes, absolutely it is.
It's Michael Fassbender. I was like, I do know.
I don't know what it was about that first episode, though, that made him look absolutely nothing like himself.
Young.
It's like very young, super clean shaven, so
I think he's got quite a distinctive head shape as well, so as soon as you put a helmet on it, you kind of lose half of that. He's got quite a long forehead.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
It was strange because I didn't recognize him whatsoever, even after you said it. I was like, I don't know. But then later on, it's like, yeah, obviously it's him. It's really weird.
Yeah,
no, James McAvoy.
Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
Michael Kutlitz. Abraham in Walking Dead's in it. Obviously Damian Lewis. It's got some big names there.
Yeah.
Some really big names.
Good stuff.
No, I think it's really good. And in terms of aging, like considering that show is 19 years old now, I don't think there's a single thing there that ages it. Or dates it, rather.
No. I mean, you get a lot of, like, the aerial scenes, like, in the airplanes and stuff.
At the end of episode 1, yeah.
Are, like, obviously CG, but it's... Since everything is kind of CG, you know, all the planes are flying, you're like, okay, there is just no other way to show this.
That's true. There's a bit when the parachute supply planes drop on Bastogne as well. Where you're like, oh, then, okay, the physics are a bit off.
Yeah.
But I think they're so isolated and so quick that it's the same as like Lord of the Rings. There's the 2 awkward green screen shots where you kind of go,
yes.
But it doesn't take you out of it at all.
No.
And to be honest, the planes one is right at the end of an episode anyway. So I'm like, I don't mind being taken out of the experience because credits. Start the next one.
No, and especially comparing that to all the practical special effects. I mean, they must have blown up so much stuff on set.
Yes.
There's so much dirt and trees and whatever exploding, flying through the air and buildings. I was like, it's very impressive.
Yeah. I do want to talk quickly, actually. Because I think a fine line between the Das Boot TV show where they all hate each other and Band of Brothers where they're all bros is Fury. Where they don't all get on in the tank, but a good number of them do. But it's a kind of necessary friendship where you definitely don't think these guys would be best mates if they weren't in a tank, but they do get on.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about the film as a whole, though. Personally, I think it takes a huge pacing dump in the middle of the film.
Oh, yeah.
When they go into that house for far too long. And I don't quite understand, because, like, there's a difference between a war movie and, like, an action film. But that's just neither. Like, that's just
true.
Some dudes chilling in a house.
That's true.
Doing nothing.
But then again, I'm also like... I mean, that might be exactly that, where you have something like an event or something that you want to tell, and then you have to construct something around that.
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, dudes driving around in a tank doing awesome stuff is cool, but also only for so much. So you have to have...
But just cut the film a bit.
Yeah, you just have to have way more than that to actually justify telling the story. And then that might just be something that needed to fill space, or they intended to bring in other stuff that isn't just fighting and some character development and stuff, but it might not have done the job. Or like, say, it's not, if you want to do an action film, that's not necessarily necessary. If you want to make a war film, you have to give us way more than that.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So that might certainly be the problem with it.
I just think nothing happens for somewhere that they spend so long. And every time I'm like, oh yeah, I'll watch something in World War II, I'm kind of in that mood, and I'm like, I like parts of Fury, but nah.
You can skip over.
Yeah, I hate skipping parts in films. It's just, like... No,
absolutely.
Yeah, I do think it's just a shame, because it's the rest of that film's good. Although I do think the use of tracer bullets in that, I'm willing to say is overdone. Because I remember, like, it looks like a laser fight, the parts. And, like, they're really exciting. I know the Germans were famous for their use of green tracers. But, like, when you got green versus the red of the Americans, I was like, this is... Did I put Star Wars on? Like, whoops. So I think that's a shame. But in terms of the character interactions, I think it's a really nice middle ground where it's like, okay, they don't all hate each other like Das Boot, where it's painful.
Yeah.
But they're not all hyper bros against the Nazis.
Yeah.
Like Banner Brothers. It's a good
that's totally fair, because if you are stuck with a group of people, like say, I mean, a lot of people might know this about quarantine, exactly. If you're stuck with people, there's going to be points where you might rub against each other in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And especially if you're like in it for different motivations, you know, if it's the whole thing of like, just I'm here to follow orders, or I'm actually here to kill all the Nazis, you know.
And you're also not choosing who you're forced together with. You know, it's kind of, this is you and you.
And then you have authority issues, which is like something like that. No,
it's very well done. Very well done.
Actually, good configuration for interesting conflict.
Yeah. No, definitely. So I think it gives an interesting piece, which you don't usually get in American war films.
Yeah, that's true.
Usually they get on pretty well because America.
Because America.
But, hey,
or you have clear good and bad, you know.
Oh, like that one bad guy.
If he's like the drill sergeant, you know he's going to be bad.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue Sobel's that character. He's just an idiot.
That's true.
David Schwimmer.
Yeah. Is that... No, that's Post Friends.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird to see him in something other than Friends.
I think it works.
Oh, yeah, he works. I mean, that's it is quite interesting because you have David Schwimmer and Simon Pegg.
I love Simon Pegg's American accent.
Yeah. No, but like they're both in the first episode. And it's just so obvious that is a much lighter mood just because of those characters. You know, they're not actually doing anything silly or funny, but just because it's them that are doing these things.
You get pre-fame Jimmy Fallon later on as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh.
Which is hilarious. He's so young.
Yeah. But it's also so Jimmy Fallon already.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I can't unsee Jimmy Fallon and then project that onto what he's doing
I think
there.
he acts it fine. I definitely don't think it's that
fine.
jarring.
It's short enough for it to not be...
Yeah, there's
cringy.
nothing that's like Ed Sheeran in Game of Thrones where they're like, look, we got Ed Sheeran.
Yeah,
you know, the camera zooms in and you're like, oh, great, well done.
Okay, he's singing, wow.
A lot of these actors are pre-fame, so it is just like, who cares? We got this guy in to deliver stuff, and only later you're like, oh, he's famous now. And then the characters that the camera does spend time with, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and they're also the main character usually. So
no, it's very, very practical and functional. Everything they're showing you.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. So yeah, I would
overall very, very good verdict.
I don't know how I'd make it better. It's pretty perfect.
I wouldn't dare try.
Where Eagles Dare, another World War II film that you've probably not seen.
I've not seen, no.
There you go.
Sounds American.
I think Where Eagles Dare... I think it's about the British commandos in Finland against the nuclear bomb creation. I might be getting films muddled up there. I think. It's been a while.
Sure.
We'll Google after.
I just thought Eagle was in America. You know.
No, because it's the... You know what?
Let's do it.
We've got time.
Where Eagles Dare.
1968. Clint Eastwood.
That is
old. It's American, isn't it? It's Bavaria to rescue a general. Oh no, I did get this muddled up. Interesting.
Oopsie doopsie.
Oopsie doopsie indeeds.
Oh, Bavaria could still be.
Schlop.
That's actually true. Some very, very nice scenic shots of the Alps.
Yeah.
Bavaria and Austria.
Oh, okay, hang on. World War II.
Like...
Ski movie. Hydrogen. Heroes of Telemark was what I was thinking of. 1965.
How does hydrogen come into play?
Because they're going after the hydrogen bombs.
Oh.
That they were making in Norway.
Those are devastating.
Yeah. Well done me for almost being right.
Yes. for knowing the plot of one movie and the title of another.
Where Eagles Dare is American. It's Clint Eastwood, famously with an American speaking English.
Yeah.
Dressed up as a Nazi.
Telemark.
Yeah, here's a Telemark. Good film.
Huh?
65 is.
I mean, 68 isn't much later.
No, I think it's more dated, to be honest. Right.
That's kind of it.
That's kind of
a
us.
lot of World War II.
A lot of World War II. Definitely, I'd say Band of Brothers is one of the pinnacles of World War II cinema.
Mm-hmm. Cinema, even.
I would put it up against Saving Private Ryan quite happily.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's better. I don't enjoy the last part.
I mean, that's the thing. You have to... I think that might be something I'm not doing, but like if you consider it to be TV and put it up against TV, that's incredible, you know?
Oh, yeah, like it's...
The scope of that show is
it's
just...
in a different league. Like, I think even looking at the budget of that was 12.5 million per episode, which is the same budget as Game of Thrones' later seasons. So they definitely had the money up front. And if you go... I mean, it's definitely, if not one of the best World War II cinematic experiences. Which means if you put it in the league of TV shows, and you go, how's it compared to any other TV show? You're like, it's probably one of the best.
Yeah.
If not the best. There's nothing so consistent. Like, even Black Sails has dips here and there. Where 4 seasons, you're going to have the episode where you're like, okay.
Okay, yeah.
We'll cook dinner with this one in the background. Whereas for a TV show, 1 season, it's perfect. So, Thank you for...
That's it on Band of Brothers.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Do check out our...
if you ever want to rewatch it, our 10-hour live stream will be there forever.
We'll definitely... I will get the timestamps for that so you know exactly when we start.
He said he'd do it, and I was like, well...
So we know exactly when we start each episode, if you just want to see one of the episodes.
Yeah, if you want more live streams of us watching the stuff that we're then going to talk about, let us know.
And also recommend some stuff to see. Yeah,
we were kind of not running out. There's a couple of franchises I've got left. Alien, Predator, Blade Runner.
Those.
But then we're kind of out. So if you've got any genres or franchises that we should watch,
we should start watching Disney films.
Absolutely not. Okay. Bye.